One of the best ways to help and support Vermont Clover, besides cheering and watching the games, is to become a sponsor. We're always looking for new partners to help deliver on the best possible experience we can for all of our players on our men's team, our women's team, and all the youth initiatives we support in the community. If you're looking to help out, consider being a sponsor. You can get in touch with me at chris@vermontclover.com.
Welcome to the Pink and Green Podcast, where we explore the rise of Vermont soccer through the lens of community, culture, and the game itself, featuring stories from Vermont Clover FC. Join us as we talk with players, coaches, and the people shaping the future of the game in Vermont. Welcome to the Pink and Green Podcast. I am AJ Murray, and this is Chris George. Chris, how are you doing today?
AJ, I am living my best life, my absolute best life over here. I really am. You also have been living your best life recently.
Yes, I have.
And this is the strange thing for me is since we met each other officially in like January or December, we see each other every couple of days, right?
Yeah.
I think the last week or so is the longest that I've gone without seeing or talking to you.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm missing my AJ.
You guys make me feel a little bad.
That's funny. I had that same thought halfway through the week. Last week I was in Vegas for work, and I'm just like, kind of miss talking to Chris. This is different.
Yeah, you're the only one who's ever said that.
I doubt that. That's funny.
Want to introduce our guest?
Yeah, I do. Our guest today is OC John O'Connor. He's the head coach for the Women's Premier Soccer League team, Vermont Wild. He's also the technical director of coaching for Summit Football Club down there in the Rutland area. And he's the head coach for the men's soccer team there at Castleton. John, welcome to the show. I hope I got most of that right.
You did, and I appreciate you having me on. It's been a good laugh so far. So
we've practically already recorded the show. Now we just got to record the show.
Yeah, I think you got some good stuff there. So
yeah, it's good. What it didn't make it in its way into the intro because I derelicted in my duties is that OC's been here for a little while, and he is kind of a little bit of a legend in Vermont soccer because of some of the work that he's done. You're a technical director for a minute, right? For the Vermont ODP program or Vermont Soccer Association.
Yeah. I was doing a lot with coaching education and working alongside Dave Sayward. So it's been great. It's been 13 years. It's crazy to think it's been 13 years I've been here, and it's been a good ride so far. So.
Yeah, the state of Vermont is really lucky to have you because most of your experience before here, or basically all of it, was at much, much higher levels or what we would consider higher levels at University of Chicago and URI and places like that. Can you, just for the listener, do you want to share a little bit about your background?
Yeah, no, I've spent a pretty good 30-year career, and I've been very, very fortunate to be, at some really good programs, but also around a lot of good people. I was really fortunate early on in my career to latch in at Dartmouth as an assistant, and I had always been coaching a little bit, but not college coaching. And so I really got a great opportunity at Dartmouth early on. I'd say in my young career, but I was actually in my late 20s or so with Bobby Clark, who's a legend in college soccer. And so Bobby gave me a really good start, and then from there I was lucky, a lot of good players around, a lot of good mentoring, and Bobby's still a really a good mentor for me, and we connect, usually weekly. And he's back in Scotland, but yeah, and then I was off to the University of Chicago for 11 years. Built a program there. We were bottom of the UAA at that time, and we built the team up into a contender, and luckily to be in the NCAA's a couple of years, and got to the Final Four one year, which we did really well. And then I had a tremendous opportunity to come back to the East Coast to go to URI and coach, at Division I, which is something I always wanted to do. and not necessarily for the Division I status of it, but more so for the contact with the players, just having as much contact as I could with the players during the year. That's something that I really, really relish, and it's the reason why I do this. So, so it was a good little run there. I had some great players. Jeff Cameron, who played in the national team, played for me for 2 years after he transferred, and we got to see Jeff develop, and had quite a few players, that moved on to professional soccer, and then after that, Division I's tough. You don't win games, and it's a tough road. So I just ended up coming up here for family reasons, and also because of Castleton was a recommendation. My college coach was the commissioner of the league at that time, the NAC, and a guy named Jim Dyer. And I just, he said it was a great place. President was super nice. Dave Walk, athletic director Deanna Tyson was great. And so, it was just a perfect place for us to kind of bring our young family at that point. With my wife, was in aquatics and had been a swim coach for 20 years, but now she's just, running the pool and doing things. So it was just like a perfect atmosphere in some way. And I knew a lot of people in Vermont because of being at Dartmouth, and I knew Dave Sayward really well, and Jesse up at UVM and quite a few people. So, so it's been good. It's been good. It's a coaching is coaching, and this opportunity with the Wild, and came back to us with the Fusion. So I've had a lot of different stuff in here, which has been fun for me. And obviously my kids develop into the game too, so that's been a big part of it, for me personally. So,
John, I want to go back a little bit. How did you get into coaching?
Well, I honestly started coaching when I was in high school. So I had a friend of mine, and I started coaching in what was the Boston Area Youth Soccer League at that point. So very different than club soccer. Chris, you probably remember a little of that, but it was really town teams. And my friend and I just started coaching a U12 team with his brother. And, we I think we probably puppeteered our high school coaches, way of doing things. And, I just got into it there to start, and then in college it was about like working camps, and I started like meeting people. And I think, in college, in coaching, networking is such a huge part of it,
Yeah, sure.
So I just started like finding opportunities. It really was opportunities to be able to play in the summer too, because you're at these camps where there's a lot of good players, but also learning about the game. And I felt like it kind of opened my eyes a lot to myself as a player. I had some penny dropping moments, along the way, in just playing by coaching, so I felt like that was a really great part of it. And, and then, once I had finished in grad school, and I played at the University of Maine, and again, I had a really good mentor there, Jim Dyer. And, but, Maine since then has dropped their men's soccer program, which is a little bit sad. Yeah. But I started coaching. I coached a little bit at when I was in grad school, just kind of as a volunteer assistant with Jim Dyer, and then I was coaching in the high school level for a little bit in Orono, and then I was in housing at that point. That was kind of looked like my path. My path was like residential life. I was director of a dorm, and I got a really good job at Dartmouth, actually running their whole residential program at that point.
Okay.
But I was coaching in the Upper Valley Lightning club in that area, but I missed like the upper level coaching. So I just kind of fell into the college coaching. Ralph Ferrigno, who had happened to be the assistant at Dartmouth at that time, left to go to Tufts to become the head coach. And then I was able to kind of step into that position. But I've been surrounded by a lot of good players. I was talking about Bobby Clark and Steve Swanson, who's the head coach at the University of Virginia now. He was the head coach at Dartmouth at that time. We were good friends. And so I really was able to latch onto him. And through other people, just along the way, you're just meeting really good people, learning some things. And I just loved the interaction with the players, and, just it all fit for me in what I was doing. I had an education background, but really it was, college coaching just seemed to me to be the route, and so yeah, I got that little path early, and then everything just kind of fell my way. And I'm a big believer in fate, to be honest with you. And so I think all this, there was a lot of fate in what was happening, in the places I were and the people I met. And, And even where I am now, I think there's a lot of fate in me ending up here at Castleton. So it's been a good ride so far. So I'm not ready to finish though. My wife would kill me. She would kill me if I stopped coaching.
Yeah. Now you finally got kids out of school, right? So
Yeah.
you can have a little bit of your time back instead of
Yeah.
having to chase that around, right? The thing
Yeah.
that I think it's different now, but you remember this is that the college coach hustle used to be like you make a couple grand for the season, right? Like not much. Like you make a couple $1,000 for all the time spent. And in the winter, it's like, okay, figure it out. And in the summer, every week you're doing a camp somewhere or as many as you can get because that's how you're actually getting paid. You're making the same in a week or two as you would make in your whole fall season.
Yeah.
And while you're doing it, it's like all the other assistants, like that's the staff, right? We used to work for Nash at Bucknell for
Right.
a long time. And that's like all the guys that are also assistants or like new head coaches. And like that becomes your kind of like peer cohort as everybody goes along. And you're spending time like right next to each other working and you're hanging out and, maybe you're going out after sessions a little bit every once in a while. And that was a hustle. It's like Bucknell and then you're at wherever and then you're at wherever, like as many weeks in the summer as you possibly can. And then you're super excited for the fall and it's like, okay, winter comes around. Hope you have a job, figure it out. And guys coach and guys are coaching, at clubs too. So like when you start doing the math on how many games you get in a year that you're actually coaching. I mean, you're coaching 50, 60, 70 games a year because you're doing a couple of club teams to make that money work. Yeah. And the smallest amount of actual game coaching is happening like during your proper season.
Right.
Because you're coaching 15, 18, 20 games, right?
Right.
But you're getting that in like 3 weeks at your club. And then it's really great.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting thing because I think, nowadays how things have changed so much. Even, when I started at Chicago, I had an assistant coach that was $1,500. That's what he got. And so it was like a grad student or someone in the area. Now Division III's full-time assistants. One of my former players here, Tommy Kirk, is the assistant at the University of Chicago now. He's making 50 grand, as an assistant Division III, and so I think you see that development has changed so much in the importance of the game obviously is made a difference. And but yeah, it was it's somewhat a tough go. At Dartmouth, my money came from being the director of coaching for Lightning Soccer.
Yep.
That money was donated to the college. The college paid me from that. So, you are spending probably an inordinate amount of time with the club soccer, but that is the reason why you're able to be the full-time assistant, for Dartmouth. And believe me, it was an easy trade-off considering the environment that I was in at that point. And it kind of just set me in the right direction, so.
Yeah. And I guess that's the other thing too, is 20 years ago, like none of these jobs were full-time. Like there are even big schools that like they weren't full-time. Yeah. And I can think of a lot of programs that are really successful that like while these guys are winning or competing for national championships, they're part-time. They're part-time because they're teachers at the school, or they're not like soccer was always a secondary thing, right? Or they're like the double head coach thing, like Hansen was like back in the day where he was like head coach of the lacrosse team in the spring and head coach of the soccer team in the fall, right? Which is wild to think about. I mean, it's only relatively recently that this guy who's a legend, like on the Mount Rushmore of coaches, is like full-time doing it. Right. Which is a crazy thought. I think about other things too that we all did. It's just different now. It's probably a little better now with the balance and things like that, but you can't change. What is, so to Clover a little bit, like what's your connection to Clover? Capelli Sport is the official equipment and apparel supplier for Vermont Clover FC. If you like those pink jerseys, you love Capelli Sport. They're also the official equipment and apparel supplier for Cape Verde, one of the best stories of the World Cup so far. They're one result away from going through to the second round, a tiny little island nation in their first World Cup ever. So if you like looking good, feeling good, and playing good, get a hold of Capelli Sport right now. CapelliSport.com.
Well, obviously, Michael, that's it, my son, so, Michael's one of the first things that, he found when the Clover was coming into being, that was something he wanted to do and play, and he wanted to continue, part of his game. Like I said to him, I played until I was 50, in leagues and stuff. And, I think he's one of those guys, he and Sean Butler, the same, both played for me here and best buddies too in Vermont. So, that was such an exciting opportunity that I saw. And obviously I know it's important for the state of Vermont, but like from my personal part of it, it's just exciting for me to be able to go and just watch my kid play, the other day we were at a game and some of the Wild kids are out watching the game. And, I was just kind of staring out into the field and one of them turned to me and said, "What's that look?" And I said, "I'm just watching my kid play. I'm just enjoying it." So I think that was such a great thing for him. And, for him to enjoy it. Our whole family, my wife and, my daughter, being able to get to see him play and continue to love his love for games. So, so that's the big connector and, season ticket holder, so important to do that too, to support the club and support him, what you guys are doing as a group, so it's really important for us, for the kids in Vermont, for sure. So.
Yeah, the other connection is that you were one of the very first people I talked to when when I had it in the hopper of like, I think I'm gonna I'm thinking about this. I don't remember. It was in August, like it was early in the season when we were talking about like scheduling that game, and I was like, I'm thinking about doing this thing. What do you think? And you were like, well, Michael would definitely do it, and there's a couple other guys here who would do it. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I came away from that conversation thinking, well, if OC, who's pretty smart about things, thinks this is a good idea, it's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
And
no, I think from the top, I mean, the opportunities the kids get, and the other part too is like, whether purposeful or not, like latching on to what was happening in Vermont at the time, like UVM wins the national championships, USL2 championship, there's all this going. When the women's team at UVM was in the final of their conference championship, so there's a lot of these things going on. And I thought the timing was ridiculously good, so hats off to you that the timing is there for all you guys, because I think it just added to the environment, and I was excited. Like, I mean, selfishly, I'm excited for my players who are here, because there are guys that, every year now will have an opportunity to be able to stay around Vermont and be able to play competitively. And they were playing in Elite 11, and that's fine. It's great to get games, but the fact is that they have a chance to be able to play at a really good level. And for some guys, training at that level will be as important as playing, so yeah, no, it's a great thing. So I'm extremely happy. I'm extremely happy for you guys and the success, but I'm extremely happy for the fact that it works out well for us, so.
Yeah, totally. And it's kind of always meant to serve. It's just meant to be like a rain shower watering the grass, right? And I honestly, I can't take any credit for the timing. I was completely oblivious to like all that stuff. I mean, I knew it was going on, but I didn't think about it like, oh man, we got to get on here while the timing is right, because I just didn't enter my mind. And I know that sounds unbelievable, but it really is true. It was really just about, and this was in another one of the podcasts, it was really about Trey coming to my house that day, or calling me that day and saying, hey, what do you think about this thing? And then me just being like, look, if we wait a year, it's not going to happen. Like, right. We just need to do it now. And the Wild coming in too is like, that's another like really awesome part of this patchwork. Yeah. I think the player pool, the way that the Wild is doing things, the way that Green is doing things, the way that we're doing things, the way that we're approaching it is all different enough that there's plenty of space for all of it. And I think that that's a really, really cool thing for just generally Vermont soccer, but more specifically those players in, let's say, 18 to 25 kind of range.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, I've said that all along, is this, every one of us, for whether men or women, have a unique look at what they want to do, right? So, the kids that want to stay, or Chittenden County kids or whatever it may be, that want to stay around and play at a good level, then they have an opportunity. For those kids that want to come down with us for a month and a half or 2 months and be housed together and do all that together, that's a different opportunity, for them. Heather Henyon, the owner of the Wild, I mean, she's put money where her mouth is. I mean, she's got internships available. The housing has been great. So it's a different one. And then obviously the green have the green, and so I think they are. And I in some ways envision, I think you and I have talked about this a little bit, envision the fact is like there may be players, there are players from the green that they gave us to, as we were trying to build a roster, kids that they were not interested in, and we explored that with those players. So I think there can be a relationship there. You know what I mean? So where the players can almost like, trade off some players that maybe they're not going to be, what you want, maybe positionally or whatever it may be, and now you can say, hey, look, there's another opportunity here. Let me give you that. And it just happened with the green. They had approached us about their backup goalkeeper from Syracuse, trying to get some games because Shippy is obviously really good and she's playing all the time. And they called us about trying to get games with us. And unfortunately, at that point, we had 4 goalkeepers, and I can't bring a 5th in, and then the week after, the Syracuse kid is off on trial somewhere and they're calling us about trying to get a goalkeeper to be their backup, so there's a relationship to be had, and a positive relationship. It's not this at all, which I think is really good for our state. And I think other places you're going to see a competition level between the clubs that probably is not healthy, with that. But I think we've got a really healthy environment to be able to help promote the game and also give kids opportunities, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. The more that we can all work together to be good neighbors is really good. For at the end of the day, who does it really benefit? And it's the players, right? Like if we're at odds, the people that end up losing out are the players, right? The girl from Syracuse or the girl who might have an opportunity over there as, goalkeeper number 2, who's not going to play, but can go up there and be goalkeeper number 2 of 2 rather than 2 of 4, right? So that kind of helps goalkeeper number 3 and 4, right? More than it helps her. So the more that we all work together collectively, the better it ends up for the players. And at the end of the day, you alluded to this a little bit. Why I coach, why you coach, I think too, it's really about the kids. And I call them kids, even though these are adults we're talking about in a lot of cases. It's really about them and, building relationships with them and being able to be some semblance of a positive role model for them, right? Show them what's possible. And I really have appreciated Heather's kind of where she's at from how we're going to position the team from like an ethical perspective and like, and just really being focused on the women's game. And like, that's a core thing. I couldn't imagine that she ever would want to do a men's team associated with the Wild because that's not the brand. And I really like that too. Whereas we're over here, we're like, we just want Vermont kids. We got to do women because there's plenty of women too. Right.
Right. No, I think Heather's taken the right perspective of, kind of where Fusion started. The origins of Fusion was really to kind of promote the women's game. I mean, that was part of Chris Chappeldane's, push. And I think it was part of the Fusion president and vice president at that point, Eric and Sarah. And, I think that's always been the big part of it. I think what Heather has brought in has been the perspective from her own perspective of, a woman leading like a major company, right? So what does it take for her to be able to do those things? And sustainability has been important. I know it's, thrown around a lot, but she wants the club to be a long-term, investment, and not investment for her, but investment for the community. That's the big piece. So, all those things. And I think that's a little the reason why, things were a little slow to start is because, she wanted it right. She's a type A. She wants things right. She wants the visual right. And the visual is really good right now. And now, we just have to back it up with a little bit more of the play, so, but I think she's got a good perspective. She's a collaborative person too, which is nice to be able to talk to someone without, the push and pull. She doesn't push in on the coaching at all, doesn't question anything, doesn't question players. So, I mean, it's almost like a joy of an owner, you know what I mean? So not having anybody that's kind of invading when in the places, and I don't do it in the other side either, So I think it's been a really good setup so far, and I see longevity for the club for sure. So.
If you love to watch soccer, the best place to do it is at the Slide-In Pub on Shelburne Road. Vermont's first and only soccer-themed bar. Come on down today and catch all the World Cup games. They also have the Vermont Clover games on too. The food's great, the people are great, and the soccer is awesome. We'll see you at the Slide In Pub on Shelburne Road.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how a good relationship should work with like ownership, coaching staff, management staff. It's like, we got all good people. Let's just trust each other to do the right things, right?
Yeah,
and I do appreciate that kind of more slow, kind of planned approach. Like, we're just a bunch of dumb soccer coaches who decided to do a team up here, right? And so we're like, yeah, grip it and rip it. We'll figure it out as we go along. And I think you can see in some of the stuff that we're doing, it definitely feels a little bit like that, right? Whereas you can see like the kind of that more kind of planned, like, you can see that the progression is like, it's like kind of happens at a different pace with what you guys are doing, which is really good, right? Like, you know, you're doing, and from a, coaching perspective and recruiting perspective. So like year one's always going to be year one.
Right.
And that's really the platform for year two and year three and year four and year five. As long as you get year one mostly rightish, it's all going to sort itself out.
Yeah, I think so too. And, I think, there's been a lot of lessons we've learned along the way, little things that we've forgotten, and now we're kind of getting them. And I think that, that kind of having that checkoff list of what made it successful is really works well with the team, and I think it will attract players, sooner than later, and keep things on a really even keel. I mean, we're all competitive too. Like, I think for all the players and for myself, we want to be more competitive. You want to win games, and you want to be in games and those, and yeah, we have that, but I think when it comes down to it, some of the experience of other players and of the teams in the league right now just, overshadow our some of our players, in the big moments. And so that just takes a little experience, and maybe even going through this experience right now will add to that for them, and they'll be able to be more prepared, down the road. So, it's good. And as I said, Heather's done a super job with it and really engaging the community. And, back in the days of Fusion, when John O'Keefe was the town manager, he kind of played that role of the Manchester engager, right? Because he was the town manager, and now Heather has kind of taken that on as owner and kind of on that part too. So, so that's the piece that I think when John left, we were missing. So, yeah, so happy with it. Hope to win a couple of games down the road here. So.
You guys will, right? Like, you guys will. There's no doubt.
Yeah, we have a tough one this Saturday. The Rogues from Rhode Island are traditionally a good team. They went to the quarterfinal, or they went to semifinal a few years back. The year after we went to the quarterfinal, so. They've got some good players. I think sometimes with the WPSL teams, as I'm sure you find with the UPSL too, is, who travels, who travels well, you know what I mean? Like sometimes teams would show up with 12 players sometimes. So it'll be really interesting to see, especially with a little bit of weather coming this weekend, whether the Rogues show up with 18 like they're supposed to, or they should, or do they show up with 12 because, they get 4 or 5 that don't want to travel that day, 4 hours, so we'll see how that rolls in, but we can take advantage of that. I'm happy to do that. So
yeah, it's a roll of the dice, right? One of the reasons that we've been successful as we have is because we travel real well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our guys are willing to bite the bullet on a 5-hour ride, truthfully, and other teams don't travel nearly as well, right? For them and for us, I think it's just because, and you probably experienced this as well. It's like, we're in Vermont, like we know going in that every away game is going to be a real hassle. Right.
Yeah.
To get to. So we're kind of have that in the back of our mind because we're so geographically isolated.
Right.
Everybody else that comes to play us, that's their one long ride of the entire season. And like people, the amount of family commitments that tend to jump up on a game, you got a long ride coming, they kind of multiply. Right. So that's not to say that that's the reason that we've won the games we've won, but it doesn't hurt. Like there's a massive home field advantage that we have that a lot of the other teams we play against don't really have, because no one from Boston cares about going to Rhode Island. It's an hour and a half, right? Or an hour. So they don't care. But they do care about driving to Vermont because that's 4 hours away.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think sometimes that kind of stuff it's funny because it happens, in the college game too, is, when we have, UMass Dartmouth coming up here or Rick, they're coming 4 hours and you either embrace it or you don't. right? You let it be a anchor around your neck, and you hear it. Like from the sidelines, I hear it from some of their players. From the other teams that come in, and that is a huge advantage for you because I think they're like, it's Vermont. I've come so far, and it's an anchor around their neck, right? And it's holding them down from being able to play and be able to compete. And I think that's a mentality, right? So if we know, and we know we're going to always travel, minus going to Albany, you're going to travel 3-4 hours for a game. It shouldn't be a problem. It's just expected. It's expectation that's in there. You have to prepare that well. And I can tell you that Michael's always, one of the things he says about the rides is great is he gets to know the guys on his team well, and they enjoy that. They have fun. I try to call him after the game sometimes to talk to him about the game. And he's like, Dad, I can't talk right now. I'm, chatting with the guys. So I'm like, all right, I just got the Heisman from my kids. So he'll talk to me later about it. But yeah, I think even the rides are enjoyed. It's like a bus ride in the college game, So I think that's kind of a side plus in a lot of ways. So.
Yeah, some of those are the best moments. There was a picture that was getting shared around, and I don't remember where it was, like in a group chat or whatever. It was one of our first games in Maine. It wasn't the very first one because we took a bus to that, but it was one of the games in Maine. And so Michael and Sean and a couple of high school guys, and there's 5 of them in this car, right? And it's like the 2 high school guys are up in the front because one of them was driving, and then Michael and Sean are like riding in the back seat. I think Sean was in the very middle, but it's just like you got the oldest guys on the team shoved into the back, like behind these high school kids. And it's like, we're having a great time. It's like,
yeah.
I mean, you can't replace those moments. Like you just can't replace those moments, I don't think. And people think that the experience is about playing the games, and it is, right? Like that's the thing that gets you there. But the real experience of college soccer or any college sport or playing in a semi-pro kind of setup like we're doing with these young men and women, it's really about the time spent together.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean that's part of a lot of my memories is just experiences you've had with these kids, and they're not always the happiest experiences. Things happen in these things, but they share them together. And if you can be part of that, I think it just, to me, it just adds to what they're doing. I've had some kids, it's been the worst of times, like I had a player at Chicago whose parents were both killed in a car accident, and I had to go, I traveled to Montana to go be with him. He's an only child,
Oh my gosh.
And that's a terrible part of it. Right. But, it's also a connection that I have with this player now that I'll have for the rest of my life, and, in a tragic situation. And you obviously have the happy ones too, but I think all these things, they just help build, the character of the kids and our own character, our own humanity, and how, it's a game for sure, but really it's the experience that they're having around it, and, developing them as people, and, that's, I think, why I've loved it so much, is because of the fact that, I see them, I go to their weddings later, I see them have kids, all this kind of stuff. And, there's a really something to be said about, my brother was a banker for his whole career. He wasn't his coworker. He wasn't hanging with his coworkers who, were having kids, it just wasn't there. So he had a different experience than I did. So, I just think, you're right. I think the whole thing about outside of what actually happens, is really the value and the I don't know if I'll call it the key, but it was really the value of their experience together, for sure. So yeah, it's a great one. It's a great one, and it's a lot of good stories. A lot of good stories.
Yeah, most of which are not fit for public consumption.
No, I think some are not, for sure, but there's some good stories to be able to wrangle back into something that it is important. Whether it's helping a kid deal with something that's going on, or trying to make an example in a game or practice of something. But you have all these stories to draw from, so I fear I'm turning into my father sometimes because I tell the same stories quite over and over again, but that's life, so if they're good, I'm going to tell them again. So
I'm embracing it. Right. And I love telling stories of my guys because it makes me feel good. And then like, I feel that connection to them, even though it's years later. Right. And we all have these things that are like, core program stories, right? And we tell these over and over and over again because, okay, a guy who's been there for 4 years may have heard this story a dozen times, but that guy on the first day, his freshman year or whenever, and we're not just telling him to tell him, it's like, it comes up in a moment and it's like, I need to tell you about this guy. And I need to tell you about this thing that happened that was real. And some of you guys know him because he's been around at alumni events, but like, and the freshmen are maybe rolling their eyes until, a decade later, you tell that story about them then, right? Remember that guy on his first day.
I think that honestly, the funniest things that I get a kick out of is things that they tell me of things that I've done that I don't remember any of that.
No.
They tell me, about something I said or a phrase I used. There was a running joke for a long time. We had a really funny guy that played for me here, Charlie Cisneros. He's 6'4" forward, a super nice guy and just really, really funny and just totally bought in. One of Michael's good friends. But Charlie used to tell all these stories about things that I would say during practice. And I don't remember that at all, like be a funny phrase or weird phrase or something. And I'm like, I never said that, Charlie. And they're like, yeah, you did. And everybody else say, yeah, you did. So, those are the ones I think that I have such a good, funny memory with, and again, if they're remembering that, it meant something to them, in some ways. So I think it kind of cements your stamp on them and, the impact that you're having on them as people, I've been lucky here. I said this at our banquet, one of the highlights of my coaching career has been the fact that my son chose to come and play here. He had a lot of other opportunities he could have taken on. And, but I think that the fact that he wanted to come here and be in the environment that he knew some of the guys, obviously from growing up around here. But, when you have that kind of stuff that happens to you, it's, it definitely marks you, in a positive way. And, it was a sad senior day. I would tell you that I had a rough time. I have rough times at senior day anyway, but having him, but again, now I watch him again, I get to continue to watch him and find the joy in the game. And, I think the Clover has presented that for him and provided it for him to be able to continue to develop. He'll become a better player more and more as he gets out of school, because I feel like that's, something that we all do in a lot of ways. So,
yeah, by the time they're done with the college experience is really like, if you look at the scale of like what everybody, like where it's like where players are at, right? If we were to like throw the European model over top, like that's kind of decision time about like whether this is going to be a real career for you or whether you're going to have to go do whatever your backup was, right? In that like early 20s time. And think about like, athletically, peak is 26, 27, 28, right? So like you're a couple years away from the athletic peak, and our game is not really about athleticism so much as it's about this thing.
Yeah.
Which is, so like you're pretty far away from your peak. Like at 22 or 23, you're finally at the age where the game is starting to slow down and you're really learning how to play.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And it's funny because, I've obviously had some good players that have played me. Cameron was, probably the peak of that. But, one of my GAs here, Michael Tankey, played for me at URI, good player out of Indiana. If you had asked me, he would ever been playing post college, he ended up playing for the Rochester Rhinos. And if it wasn't for injury, he probably would have played more. Head coach at Canisius now. But that was a guy that, because of his soccer brain, he could go to the next level. And because he wasn't the most gifted, he was very gifted technically and not most gifted physically, like athletically, but his brain was so good that he could make other players better. And yeah, it's an amazing thing to see people where they finally finish up and end up, and I've had some players along my career too that, like they start here, and then, I have them at Notre Dame working camp with me, and they're playing with the Notre Dame players. And I'm like, they're comfortable. And if they had never played starting here, right? Because if they've gone somewhere else and they're not playing, or they're on the bench and just practicing, never been able to develop themselves to get to where they want to go, So I think being in an environment where you can be able to play right away, has a benefit to it, and you definitely see that, and you're seeing it quite a bit in the college game now with the transfer portal and stuff, where kids go in, they get a good season under their belt, and then they're looking somewhere else. So I'm not saying that's the best thing in the world, but
For all you goalkeepers out there, check out S1 Goalkeeping. They're the best goalkeeper gloves, they're pro-proven, and they're cost-effective. Our Vermont Clover goalkeepers wear the original in black, and they absolutely love them. So every save you see, it's made by an S1 goalkeeping glove. They're the best goalkeeper gloves, pro-proven, cost-effective. S1GKUSA.com. No, it's something that we don't like that, and probably at your level too. Like that's not a thing that I really have to deal with so much, right? Because, and it's probably the same for you. It's a real specific guy that I want to come because I really, for me, it's not exciting to bring in like lots and lots of guys. I like to have like a really targeted group of guys that I can kind of start that relationship building with over the course of their recruiting process. And then, we do this thing together. So, my heart breaks a little bit every time somebody needs to leave for one reason or another. Right.
yeah.
But it's also the level that we're at. Guys are not looking at that like, oh, I got to go here because I have to go to the next level. It's just not who they are or what they want as players. But I think about this too, like coaching makes you a better player. So for all the guys that are like, I'm having trouble like making that jump from like a couple of minutes here and there's a sophomore to like, how do I get like to be one of the guys as a junior? It's like, go coach the oldest players that you can, because you learn so much because you got to start thinking about the game.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And there's something to be said for like, okay, come in and don't play much as a freshman, because really coming in as a freshman is like, you got to learn the actual game that's being played. Right. And being comfortable with like, okay, I'm going to take the minutes where I can get them and earn those minutes. Right. Versus like, now I can step into a larger role.
Right. Right.
Right.
I'm a byproduct of that. Like I was a byproduct of how, coaching, when I started coaching out of college, I became a much, much better player just because of the focus on like doing the right things, making the right decisions, all the things you're part of, and we encourage, like we have our guys here and some of the women with the Wild are doing some individual sessions and coaching kids and things like that. And I think that's a bonus for them, to do that, because it just opens their eyes a little bit more. And I found what was happening with me is like my decision-making became so much better because of the fact is, what if one of those kids is on the sideline watching me play men's league and I'm making bad decisions? So how does that, how does that impact me? Or, they hear about this, there, here, there, so it opened my eyes completely. And then when you do the same thing and you're playing with better players, like that's a crazy part for me too, is just seeing how they can affect you, they can affect you, make you better. And even in recruiting, I do that a lot where I'm looking for the kid that makes everybody else around them better, and I think that's a big piece of it, what's going, but the coaching part of it, I think, Michael coached, he coached here at Summit, he came and helped us with the Wild and helped with Fusion too. And, I think that helped him to be a better player himself because of just the kind of understanding of the tactical parts of the game and then being able to do it at the same time, so.
Yeah, there's a certain maturity that he communicates with on the field to the guys on the field that is like a person who has coached a little bit, like saying the things that coaches would say sometimes, right? Like, hey guys, like remember the situation. Like I find him saying versions of that a lot of times. Like, hey, game situation, like versions of that where it's like, we're up 1-0 or 2-0. Like, let's just
we don't have to score, right?
Right. Like
you hear him say a lot. I hear him say you don't have to win it, right? Because a lot of kids want to go in and try to win every tackle.
Right.
I'll tell you a funny story about him when he was little. We honestly, when we were in Rhode Island and both of my kids were younger, we did not push them into playing on a team or anything until they asked us to, and so they're playing with Charahoe Youth Soccer, right? So this is down in Southern Rhode Island, and Michael, I go to a game and it was hard, but at URI it was tougher to kind of see those because I was away a lot during the weekend games, but I happened to get to go to a game and they're playing 3-on-3 mini goals, build out line. They've got the whole thing going on, right? And so the ball, they let the team come out. The other team gets it, and they're dropping back towards their goal. And I hear Michael say, keep your shape, keep your shape. And one of the mothers turns to me and goes, I don't think my kid understands what that means. And I said, I don't think he understands what it means. He just hears me saying, but he's like, he's holding on to the post when he's on a corner, you see all these little things that he saw all the Jeff Camerons and the rest of these guys doing. But, it's just it's a byproduct of the hearing coaching, So, I don't think still what keep his shape was until he was about 16. So
no, it's like my daughters too. Like they both have a pretty good game feel. Like we talk about this all the time. Like kids who have good game feel, right? Like they tend to be in the right spots, whatever. And this is the benefit to being a coach's kid is you get dragged around a lot and you see a lot of soccer. And then the downside is that like you're a coach's kid, so like you're on this trip that ain't yours. Like,
oh yeah,
and Michael's your kids are a little bit older than mine, but this is a thing that I really try to be conscious about is like, how are we around the game? Because they both love it. And it was the same deal as like, I never said, oh, you got to go play soccer. When she was 3 years old, she was like, Dad, I want to play soccer. I'm like, cool, we'll do that now or whatever. And Posey played GBGSL, which is amazing. For those who don't know, Greater Burlington Girls Soccer League is unbelievable. It's like an all girls rec thing where they just put you on random teams. Everybody's got a different color uniform. And it's really all about this, like, let's have a fun experience as little girls together. And it is awesome. Like it's really awesome. And she had the best time. And then, she just wanted to keep playing. And Luna's the same way. She's like, well, I don't know if I know about sports, but like, I want to play soccer. Right. And so they play and they have a good time. Yeah. But now that Posey's getting older, I'm trying to be really conscious about like the conversations we're having and who I show up as. Like, am I showing up as coach? Am I showing up as dad? Am I showing up as like crazy soccer parent or what?
Yeah, no, I get that. We had our conversations early on, with both Megan and Michael about like the kind of the responsibilities and unfortunately the, things are going to be put on them for whatever reason. And not only because of, I didn't actually coach either one of them in a team until they were both probably 15 or 16. I let other people do it. But, one of the things that I did talk to them about is, when you're not only involved in your youth club, but you're also the head coach at Castleton, there is something about that, there's going to be that idea of, oh, they're playing because of the coach's kid, whatever it may be. And that's a hard pressure to have on kids, there's expectations like, that they know more and they're just like any other kid. They're developing themselves as they go along. And do they have some advantages because they're around an environment that can teach them a little bit more? Absolutely. But the fact is, it's a hard pressure on them, for sure, and I don't think either one of them felt the pressure, but I think they could have if they didn't understand that both Sheila and I, the only expectation we had for them is they enjoyed what they were doing and they were working hard at it to make it to be the best that they could be, otherwise than that, no expectations for them to be an all-state player or the lead scorer in their team or whatever it may be. Just enjoy it and grow the love for the game and and that goes a long way, but it's a tough one, because I've actually coached, Bobby Clark had both of his sons played for him. One played at Dartmouth, one played at Stanford. And Jamie Clark is now the head coach at University of Washington. So, so they have this builder. So he had his kids that played for him. Mike Keller, who used to coach at USM, has his son that played for him. So there's a lot. Devin O'Neill down at Western New England had both of his sons play for him. And sometimes there's quite a lot of pressure, that can be put on those kids, not on their own fault, but it's just we've all talked about that at times about how it just makes it harder on them if they don't have an understanding of it, and if they have our support, then that pressure kind of leaves them, I think, in some ways. So yeah. But.
Yeah. What do you think, AJ? We've talked for like an hour and you're just listening.
No, I definitely wanted to ask, what's the Chris and John connection? How do you guys know each other?
I don't know. Chris, when did we first meet?
Probably when I was first coaching ODP.
Yeah.
And when you were coaching it, David might have been DOC at that time, but you were coaching it when we used to practice down at the polo grounds, remember?
Yep. Yeah, I think so. I think that was when it was. And Yeah, no, it seems like it was just yesterday, but it's been a while, you know. And I think our connection has been good, you know, and the fact is it's for different reasons, right? You know,
Hmm.
there's been ODP part of it, there's been obviously playing against each other, you
Hmm.
know, recruiting, all that, but you know, I think it's become kind of part of the Vermont, you know, my Vermont culture of soccer culture, coaching culture, you know. So you know, it's been good. And then to find out all these little things, you know, Green Mountain, all
Hmm.
that kind of stuff. I think that to me is amazing. I'll tell you a funny thing too, is when I was coaching at Chicago, I coached an all-star game one time. And it was after we had gone to the Final Four, and it was myself and the Green Mountain coach at that time were coaching the team together. And we had a couple of Green Mountain kids. And I remember saying to myself, I didn't even know where Green Mountain College was. And that was in 96 or 97, right? But really good players, like really, really good players, you know? So
Oh
you're
yeah, probably Richie Grant. That was probably
yeah,
like Richie
Richie Grant was
Grant
there. That was one of them.
and Brian Dempsey.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And Chris Gilmore
Yeah,
is
Chris
a
was coaching with me.
staple of Vermont soccer at the
Yeah.
well, just kind of Vermont colleges at the college level because he was at Green Mountain for a long time. He wasn't the first coach there, but he was the coach there. He coached there. I mean, he's got like almost 300 wins, or actually more than 300 wins, which is
Wow.
a bananas thought, right?
Yeah.
And then he was at
Yeah.
Linden for a little bit. He coached at St. Rose for a little bit. That's who I played for.
Right.
I was actually hit my 2 years there, so I was only there for 2 years because I had eligibility, but I graduated. My last year there was his last year there also.
Mhm.
So he was done at the end of the semester in 2005 when my class of guys, which was the last class of guys that had scholarships because we
Yeah.
were at that time going from the NAIA
Yeah.
into Division 3 and moving in there. So we played this like basically full D2 schedule except for the Vermont schools, Linton, Johnson, St. Joe's in Rutland we played.
Yeah.
And there were some real good players on those teams.
Mhm.
Like real good. And he was really good at finding those guys. And there was a certain attitude, and Chris's attitude is this way too. There's a certain attitude in those guys is like they just like did not care. Like they did not care who you were. And guys I played this with were like this too. They did not care who you were. They were gonna come up and just kill you. Like that was all they wanted to do is score 100 goals against you. And they were relentless. Like he tells these stories about like they're playing these teams in the NAIA in the old Mayflower conference.
Yeah. Yeah.
They weren't that good. And it's like, we're up by 5 or 6. And I'm putting subs in to try to like get them to slow down. And they just like wouldn't stop. Okay.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. It's also really interesting. Like those guys, there are a lot of those guys that are coaching too. Not a ton, but like a lot. So Rick Stanton coaches the women at UMBC
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Richie is in, where's he? San Diego.
I think so. Yeah.
I think so. But he was at Memphis he basically built that program at Memphis.
Yeah. I
Right.
met Richie during coaching school. So I was
Yeah.
at my B license, and Richie was at my B license, and that's how I got to know him. And then I knew him from recruiting through, you know, I'd see him at events and stuff. But yeah, and I didn't even realize that he had been at Green Mountain until I was over there and saw some of the stuff. So
Yeah. It's a really kind of small fraternity of like those of us of which I'm a part is like, so when you're somewhere at an event and you see guys, like there's going to be a pickup game and like we're going to play and we're going to just pull people in and play, you know, we're all broken down old men. It was like, we're still going to play this pickup game. And some of the guys like Richie, it's been a while. It's probably been a decade since I've seen him because, you know, we're recruiting different places, but
Yeah.
like he can still play even
Oh,
as a
yeah.
guy in his, you know, he's like 15 years older than me or so, like 10 years. I mean, he could still play,
Yeah.
like play. I mean, he was real good.
For sure.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I remember him coaching school. He was a really good player. I was really lucky in my coaching school. Jill Ellis was in my coaching school.
That's awesome.
When I was there, and Julie Shackford, who coaches at William and Mary now, and you know, I had a guy Bobby Vosmeyer who played with the Dutch national team, and he was coaching the Pittsburgh area. So we had a really good, you know, coaching school at that point. And Richie was in my B. So you know, so you see everybody play, right? And you know what they are as players for sure. You know. So,
Yeah.
cool.
And even the coaching school connections, because there were so many less coaches, like a lot of those are persistent relationships because you keep running into each other or they make you do those group projects, like
Yeah.
as if you're on a coaching staff and
Yeah.
you work pretty closely with guys and you maintain a lot of connections. Right. And
Right.
if there's any takeaway from this entire thing, it's like understand the network and like maintain it because you just never know who you're going to run into. And there's a lot of really good people in coaching, I think.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I mean, the networking part of it, I think reason, I'll be honest with you, the reason why I got an interview at the University of Chicago was because of Julie Shackford from my coaching school. She was coaching at Carnegie Mellon at that point, and she made a connection with the Chicago coach at that point. She knew her, and Amy Reifert is a good friend of mine now, and they said, hey, this is guy who's from at Dartmouth, and he's here at our coaching school. You should contact him, and then so that's kind of how it fell in. Again, there's fate, right?
Hmm.
Fate falls into a funny way, but if it isn't for the networking and being part of those, that coaching community, it probably never happens.
Well,
So
and you know how that goes too. It's like if you're looking for a little something, you're like, hey, I might be looking for a little something. What do you hear?
right,
Right? Or hey, I need to hire an assistant. Like, who you got? Like, who do you know that's looking that might be a good fit?
right,
And that's the other thing too, is I not just speaking for myself and all the other guys that are kind of in this network, is like when you call somebody out, or when somebody calls you and is like, hey, I'm looking for an assistant. What do you think? It's like you're trying to find a person that you know. It's not about who's the best coach, but who's going to be the best fit for that person, because you know a little bit about their habits and how they work, right?
agreed. I mean, I use Aaron Murphy as a good example, who has been my GA here the last couple of years, played at UVM as a goalkeeper, and now she's helping me with the Wild. She played for Fusion when we were Fusion. I asked her 2 years out whether she wanted to be my GA because I thought she was a perfect balance for me.
Yep.
Like I told someone this one time is like Erin could get into the players a little bit and then allow me to do the other stuff that's that kind of tactical things like the emotionality that she has and kind of being closer to them. She can get into them a little bit at halftime, even with our guys, and our guys are really receptive of it. Like they understood it, and then I could sit down and talk to her. So finding the right balance is definitely an important part of it, and you see these long-term coaching relationships that people have, whether in professional sports, international level, whatever it may be. It's usually people that are those that complement the other person. That's why they're coaching for so long, because they complement them so well, and I've been fortunate. Like Aaron's off to URI to be an assistant there, which is ironic too that I have a Chicago and a URI person, but she's going to be really good to complement the coach there, of what I understand, because Megan Jesse needs maybe a little bit of what Aaron has, so but it's a good compliment for sure. Finding the right person is just like in recruiting. That's the big part. So
Yeah, find the right person. And this is a thing we definitely need to talk about, right? Is like women coaching men. Like I think this, full disclosure, when I was a kid, I actually played for like several women, which that's an incredibly rare thing. And I'm not talking about rec league. I'm talking about like,
yeah,
what for us would have been club, like, travel soccer. I played for 2 or 3 women coaches, which is like, that's an incredibly rare thing for people our age. But now we're getting to a point where women like Erin are actually coaching in men's teams in a way that like they're being given these opportunities and they're doing a really good job and just proving like there really isn't, there's not just like good women's coaches and good men's coaches. It's like there's just good coaches, and
yeah,
certain people are fit for like certain groups of people.
right, right. I mean, Kelly Knudsen is a good example of that up in who's at CVU now. She
Yep.
coached at Dartmouth, she coached at UVM, and she was coaching at South Burlington for a while, and she was coaching with the boys. And
Yep.
she's another one of those people that, like, she's just a coach. She just
Mm-hmm.
knows what she's doing, and she's confident in the way she deals with people, and so it's an easy one for her to be able to do that. And there's sometimes it's difficult, relationships women to women too.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to say coaching women is different. It is different, in for me personally, because I think more of me is about age gap than anything. But I do think there's a different way to be able to approach it, and then what your how you get things out of them is a little different, and feedback is a little different. There's some players, certainly like Erin's a good example of someone that I could be a little more firm with, and but I think that's her Long Island in her, so
Yeah.
she's good with that. But there's other plays you can't, but I think that happens with men too. It's about personalities, right? And trying to figure out what motivates them, and and what are the things that are most important to them, and how you can approach them the best way to get the most out of them. So I think finding that balance somewhere is the puzzle, and that's kind of the fun puzzle in some ways with coaching is how do we do that?
Yeah, it is. I really like what you said about like understanding them and what motivates them, because that is the job, right? I think we need to be spending as much or more time like actually getting to know our players as we do on thinking about the soccer, right? Because like the soccer is kind of easy, right? I mean, it's not easy, but it's not real complicated.
Right.
But understand it, and each team that you have presents a different and unique puzzle. Like every year at Castleton's going to be like that every year. Like it's different and unique. It's the ultimate relationship game. You take one person out of that whole relationship environment and the entire dynamic changes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
you don't necessarily even know how it's going to change or which players are going to be really impactful, but it does. So every year you're trying to put together that puzzle in the best way you possibly can. And the only way you do it is by really spending time next to somebody, understanding what makes them tick.
Right.
So that when you're trying to teach them, what I find is when you're trying to teach them, if you can find their best way for them to learn, then you become a much better teacher. I had a guy play center back for us at Paul Smith's, actually a young guy, he was a freshman last year. And he was like way behind the game. It seemed like he was just like 2 steps off, like not seeing the game, just kind of watching it. Right. And he's not a guy who like watches. He's like an all action kind of guy. And at a certain point, I'm just like, hey, what's going on? And he's like, Coach, I'm a really visual learner. I'm like, oh, okay. Now I get it. So now when I'm explaining something, right? Like when I'm teaching a thing, like it's small sided or whatever, or I'm teaching a shape, I'm like, hey, come over here come over here. Hey, did you really understand what I was talking about? Because I tend to be more of a verbal teacher than anything. And he's like, yeah, some of it, Coach. I'm like, all right, I'm going to use these cones and I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about. Like let him think on him. Oh yeah, I totally get it.
Right.
And
Right.
for him, it really unlocked it. Number one, more than I became a better teacher. Why I became a better teacher was because I created a safe space for him to say, hey, Coach, I didn't really get that. Can you show it to me in this other way that I'm going to get it better?
Yeah.
Right. Just because like it didn't make sense to me. And now, the relationship is such that like that makes his relationship with the team better, because he's going to go with whenever somebody says something, a team leadership guy, he's going to look at him and say, hey, can you do this for me? Because
Right.
because I made it okay.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
So it's better for him.
I agree. Yeah, no, it is. I mean, sometimes kids are afraid. They're afraid not to agree, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're afraid, you say, does that make sense? And that you see the shaking heads when upstairs it doesn't make sense for whatever reason. And there's nothing wrong with that. As I try to unlock that, is like say it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to say I don't understand. Let's help you understand that, and I think that's part of the teaching, part of it, and you find it more and more with just differing personalities and different experiences where they've come from. And, I think that's the fun part of it, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it takes a couple of years. Sometimes it happens right away, and you get it. So, I think that's an interesting one. So
I think we got to start thinking about wrapping up the episode. It's been about an hour.
Oh, has it? It's time flies when you're having a good time, right?
It does.
Yeah, I told you, if you get us two together, we're gonna talk friggin' your ear off. So
it's been so good. It's been like listening to a podcast, but I have to remember I'm part of this and I gotta talk too.
Oh my gosh, AJ.
So
Just stop it.
It's gonna be good stuff.
Hold on, we do have a couple minutes more. Like, what are some things that like we didn't talk about that like are burning questions for you?
I mean, you've covered a lot. Like I wanted to hear what it was like to coach Michael, and you talked about that. You guys talked a lot. John's talked a lot about how positive Clover has been for what he sees Clover is doing in the soccer community. You guys just had a great conversation about coaching your athletes and stuff, and John touched on some really good points. So honestly, for me, like you've hit a lot of the stuff that I wanted to talk about.
Good.
So this has been great.
Great. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, sometimes it just flows, right? Sometimes, it's going. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
That's really good stuff.
I'll be honest with you. Some of my favorite times in sitting down talking with people is when it's just kind of like this. So you just gain so much more from these conversations than anything really kind of official, in some way. So
Yeah, and that this is what's going to make a really good podcast episode too, right? Like
Right.
you guys are just talking really good conversations, not scripted. We're not trying to guide you anywhere. We're just kind of see where it goes, and it's been a lot of fun.
Good.
John, before we fully wrap up,
Yep.
you coach a lot. So
Yeah.
what do you do when you're not coaching?
That's a funny one. I've been lucky. I mean, my wife was a coach for 20 years, a swim coach. She's fully involved in what we do. We do a little traveling every once in a while. Like
Yeah.
we're really lucky. Both my kids studied abroad. So Michael was in Belfast his junior year in the spring. Megan was in England. So we traveled there. We went to Ireland for the first time together. So we've actually, now that we're a little bit older and the kids are more independent, we're able to do some things like this to travel a little bit more. We find our time to do things. I mean, I think Shill's been so intricate in kind of my coaching journey and being part of the team. People talk about family all the time, but we have the players over to our house for barbecues and dinners and watching the World Cup or whatever it may be. So I think it's all in the family that way. So we try to do some things. She's from the Midwest originally, so we get out to the Midwest and see her family and spend some time in Chicago, usually every year, just to do some things there. Usually we kind of time it with a soccer game at like Soldier Field or something like that. But last year we went to a White Sox game, and go back. We used to live up by Wrigley, so we'll go to see the Cubs play or do things like that. So we just try to find some time to do stuff together, off there. I mean, I'm a bit of a workaholic, so like I take my work home with me, but I also balance that with some other things, chopping down a branches off a tree the other day. So, I just try to find and meld that in together. I'll take, an hour to do something at home and then I'll go off and do a few other things. But I've been trying to step away a little bit from like, at least with Summit, coaching a team to give myself a little bit more time. And part of that time is to obviously be able to watch Michael play with the Clover, but also, my daughter's in Virginia right now working at an marine education center. So, we're going to spend some time down there. So it's just trying to cut some time out in between and even support the coaches here at Castleton, go watch some, hockey game or basketball game or lacrosse. I want to try to do that as much as I can too. So, and just enjoy it. So yeah,
nice.
It's a fun one. So
very cool.
Good.
Chris, any final words from you?
Nah, when I was thinking about you outside chopping trees down, and I was thinking about how that's a funny picture, but also I'm thinking
actually
about
a saw. I'm up there with a saw. I will tell you. I'll tell you a funny one that's off that. So a chainsaw. My wife doesn't want me using the chainsaw when she's not around, but so I'm out with these branches. I'm trying to chop them up so I can put them in the fire at some point. The wood is so freaking hard, my chainsaw doesn't work. So now I'm working with a handsaw to cut them. I'm like, I've lost arrow. All the kind of, this is just like a 5-minute thing I can do by chopping these branches up, and that it becomes a sweat filled, hour. So those little things like that. Working on the house is part of what I'm doing too. So, but
it's deep focus, right? It's deep focus. So like, it's going to take 5 minutes, and then you end up taking an hour. And I find deep focus really refreshing. Deep focus on like a whole lot of nothing, right? And like not just sitting there staring off into space, but like Chris versus tree, right? My wife tells this funny story about me outside. We've got these burning bushes, me trying to put like Christmas lights in them, one of those like net shaped Christmas lights where I'm like, I had no awareness of this at all. It's kind of cold out, but not that cold. And I'm like trying to like get it on the thing. And like she and my daughters were like in the window laughing, just like watching me like wrestle this tree to try to like get this thing in there. But but I feel great. I get done. I'm like, yeah, look at that. Like, looks good. How long was I out there? Oh, an hour and a half. Like, oh, all right. This is the only thing I did.
The other day, I missed the first 15 minutes of one of the World Cup. I was out there doing that. Like, I missed the first 15 minutes. It's already 1-0. So
I got to set timers because I just
for sure.
Well, and this is the thing about coaching too that people don't realize is like so much of what we do is like deep focus. Like when you're watching an activity or you're thinking about like the game before, it's like this deep focus.
Yeah,
and maybe it's lost in the modern world, not to expound on all that, but maybe it's lost in the modern world is like the ability for deep focus and how important that is as just for human development.
Right. Agreed. Yeah. It's hard to do. So, Oh, well, I'll work on my deep focus.
I mean, you're out there sawing. It's good. You don't want to cut your finger off.
Yeah. All right.
Awesome. Well, John, this has been a fun conversation.
Great.
John, you are the head coach for Vermont Wild. Please go to vermontwildfc.com to check out their schedule, buy some tickets, watch them play. John, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me on. It's really fun. I enjoyed it.
Awesome. Well, for this episode of the Pink and Green Podcast, I'm AJ.
And I've been Chris.
All right, we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
That's going to do it for today's episode of the Pink and Green Podcast. A huge thank you to our guests for joining us and sharing their story. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a review. It helps more people discover the growing soccer community here in Vermont. You can follow Vermont Clover FC and the Pink and Green Podcast on social media for updates, match coverage, and behind-the-scenes content throughout the season. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Until then, keep supporting local soccer and keep the game growing.
Wrapping on a